In this video, I'm going to be showing you 40 essential settings that you need to change on your Nintendo Switch 2. Now, these settings are going to help increase battery life, make your Switch faster, unlock new hidden capabilities, and overall make your experience using your Switch 2 even better. So without further ado, let's dive in. Alright, so to start, let's go ahead and assign a name to your Switch. So to do this, we're going to jump into Settings, and then scroll all the way down to where we find System right here. And then we're going to tap onto console nickname, and in here you can name your Switch to basically anything that you will recognize. And next I want to show you a setting that's going to allow you to load up your games even faster. So check this out. If I tap on a game, as you can see, we're going to jump right into that game without having to first select which user I want to load up the game under. And there's a setting for that we're going to need to change. So to do this, we are going to go into your settings here, system settings, and then scroll down to where we find user. And then in here, we have skip selection screen, and you want to make sure that that is turned on. This is especially great if you have just one profile like I have here on this Switch, meaning skipping that selection screen is going to allow you to load up your games even faster. And next, let's check out the theme. So over in the system settings menu, we do have a tab here for themes. Now, it is a little bit underwhelming because there is literally just two, basic black, basic white, and then basic black. And I think for most people, I think basic black is going to be a great theme to choose, as it's just going to be darker, so nicer to look at night, and also helps save some battery because of that. However, for this video, I am going to be switching it back to white. But again, for most here, I recommend you stick to this basic black theme. Now, on the subject here of the display, let's take a look at some essential display settings to change. So over in the system settings page here, we have a display tab, and I want to run you through a few important settings here. So first of all, we have your TV resolution, and you're going to want to make sure that that is set to the highest possible resolution to match your TV and get the best quality out of your games. And then secondly, we have your RGB range, and the same thing here, we're going to set this to full range RGB, and this is going to enable even better color output from the Switch. Now, beneath that, we have the option to turn on burn-in reduction. Now, by default, this will be on, and it's going to dim the screen after some inactivity. This is something I only recommend you turn on if you are playing on, say, an older OLED model TV, as newer OLED TVs have really great anti-burn-in features already built in, so you don't have to worry about this. And of course, the display on the Switch 2 is not an OLED, it is an LCD. So on this display, you don't have to worry about burn-in. So again, unless you're on an older OLED TV, I suggest you turn this on. Otherwise, and for most people, I suggest you turn this off. Now, from here, we are going to scroll further down, and we're going to turn on 120 Hz output. This is very essential. If, of course, your TV supports it, this is going to give you a smoother gameplay, right? A higher refresh rate, making those games run at 60 FPS as opposed to otherwise 30. So this is going to give you a much better output and make your game feel smoother. And then beneath that, we have HDR output. Now, by default, this will be set to always enabled. And always enabled means that HDR will always run. And HDR stands for high dynamic range. It's going to give you brighter whites and darker darks in your gameplay. However, not all games are supported out of the box, particularly some older Switch 1 titles, in which case I recommend you only enable HDR for compatible software, as if you set this to always, it will try and add HDR to games that don't even support it, and the colors can start to look a bit off. So I suggest you set this to only compatible software. And this next one here is a really quick setting that I want to show you that is especially useful if, say, you are in the middle of playing a game like Cyberpunk here on the Switch, one of my all-time favorite games. Of course, the normal way to go to your settings would be to press the home button and then launch your settings menu from here. However, if there's just a quick setting that you want to switch on the fly here, what you can do is, instead of pressing the home button, you want to press and hold it. And as you can see, that's then going to bring up this secondary menu, allowing you to quick some core system functions like, for example, your volume, your brightness, even connect to a Bluetooth device, and change that right on the fly by pressing and holding the home button here while you're in a game. So something that I think is very useful. Now, this next setting I want to show you is going to make your Switch more secure. So let me show you what I mean. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into settings and scroll all the way back down to system where we were earlier. And then in here, we are going to scroll to console lock, and you want to turn this on. And what this is going to allow you to do is essentially set a custom 4 to to 8-digit PIN to unlock your Switch, kind of like adding a PIN code or passcode to unlock, for example, your phone. So this, of course, is going to enable you to protect the personal data that you may have on your Switch. I would say that's the advantage. The downside, however, is that it takes a little bit more time to, well, unlock and start playing a game because you have to type in that PIN. So depending on your situation, this may be useful to set up, and this is where you find it. This will certainly go a long way to making your Switch 2 more secure. Now, this next setting is going to make your Switch 2 a little bit easier and perhaps more comfortable to play if you are someone like me who has come to the Switch 2 as previously a console player. So I came from the Xbox Series X, and the reason this setting is important is because what this is going to allow you to do is swap the A and B buttons, because on the Switch, as you know, A is the button to go forward and B is the button to go back, whereas on Xbox, and I believe also on the PS5, that is inverted. So the B button, or rather the bottom button here, would be to go forward, and the right button would be to go back. And as someone who came from the console to the Switch, I often find myself mixing up the two. So there is a way to reorient these buttons, and to do this, we're going to go into system settings here, and then scroll down to where we find controllers and accessories, and then in here scroll down to where we find swap A and B. And if we tap into that, we now have the ability to swap these two buttons. So now B will be to go forward and A will be to go back. And now I want to talk about storage. As you can see, I've got a few great games installed here on my Switch, primarily Cyberpunk and Mario Kart World, but the storage will fill up fast. So when you reach that inevitable point in the future, it is important to be able to manage your storage to then free up storage for more downloads. So to do this, we're going to jump into system settings, and then we're going to scroll to where we find data management. And here you get a really neat overview of how much storage is available on your Switch versus how much has been used. And then we can actually tap onto manage software to get a more detailed look into exactly what is taking up storage on my Switch, which games, and then how much storage each game is taking. So if you are running low on storage, definitely this will be the place to free up storage for future games. And I want to talk about pairing Bluetooth headphones to your Switch, something that is super useful if you are playing, say, on a plane or late at night. Really great to be able to connect right to your AirPods or any Bluetooth headphones or speakers for that matter. So let me go ahead and show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is jump into settings, and then we're going to scroll to where we find Bluetooth audio. And then here on the top, you'll see the previously connected devices. See, that's my AirPods 4s. And then we can add device. And as you can see, it's now going to be searching for Bluetooth devices around me. Now, of course, you have to make sure that your headphones or speakers are in pairing mode. So on AirPods, you want to leave the case open without the buds, or if you are on the Pros, you'll have a little button here on the back to press and hold to enter pairing mode. And that's usually how you pair Bluetooth headphones, even non-AirPods, and then they will show up here, and then you can tap to simply connect. Now, what is also neat is if, say, you are in the middle of a game and you want to switch your audio source, simply press and hold the home button like we talked about earlier, and then here you will have your Bluetooth devices connected here, and you can tap into that to instantly switch over to your AirPods from the Switch's built-in speakers, which are actually pretty good compared to the Switch 1. But again, sometimes you need to be more silent and have the audio just for yourself. And this brings us over to the battery life, more specifically a setting that's going to show you how to get more accurate battery life on your Switch 2. So to do this, we're going to tap onto settings, and then in here we're going to scroll back down to system, and here if we scroll down we have your battery percentage, and you want to make sure that that is turned on. And as you can see, we now get the battery indicator but also a percentage to give you a really good overview of how much battery exactly you have left. Now, another really important setting in this same page here, so back into system settings and into system here, you want to turn on stop charging at around 90%. Now, this here is going to go a long way to preserving the battery health on your Switch, making your battery last longer, and by extension, making your Switch last longer. So why is this important? Well, any battery, particularly batteries that you'll find in the Switch, in your smartphones, laptops, whatever, if they charge up to 100%, there's a lot of strain put on the battery in terms of the voltage. Whereas if they charge up to, say, 95, 90, even 80%, that strain is going to be lowered, and that's going to help preserve your battery health and ultimately help it last longer. So with this setting on, your Switch will be limited to charging up to 90%. It will not reach 100. It'll be limited to 90%. So you do sacrifice a little bit of percentage, but again, it's going to go a long way to helping your battery last longer and ultimately your Switch last longer, saving you from having to do a costly repair down the road. So I think for normal use, if you're at home, just casual day-to-day play, I definitely recommend you turn this on. The one exception would be if, say, you are going for a travel day, then I suggest you turn this off just to let it charge fully to get that full maximum capacity. But otherwise, so the other, let's say, I don't know, 90% of the time, right? Definitely suggest you turn this feature on to preserve your battery health and help your Switch last longer. Awesome. So now I want to move over to the JoyCons, which have been hugely upgraded on the Switch 2. I think they are a lot better. Particularly the rumble in these controllers is a big step up compared to the previous JoyCons here that we had with the Switch 1. But there is a setting that you want to make sure to enable that vibration feature. So what we're going to do is over in settings, we're going to scroll to where we find controllers and accessories. And here you want to make sure that controller vibration is turned on. Of course, this will take a little bit of battery. So if you are very concerned about saving battery, you could choose to turn this on, turn this off. I like to turn this on, however, because it gives a more immersive experience as you are playing your game. Now, on the subject of battery here, the battery indicator that you see here on the top right will be the battery indicator for the Switch itself. However, let's say you've got your JoyCons disconnected from the Switch and you want to know what the battery life is like for your JoyCons. Well, what you can do is over on the home screen, tap on this little controller icon here in the bottom right, and this will give you an overview of the battery life of both JoyCons individually. So this here is very useful, and that way you know how much these are charged, not just how much your Switch is charged. Now, another thing that is really useful and important to check every once in a while is to check for any updates for your controllers, because not only can you update your Switch, but you also have separate updates for your Joy-Con. So if, say, ever a Joy-Con is not running the way it should, or God forbid, you're experiencing drift, it may be that you just need an update. So to check for this, we're going to go into settings, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find controllers and accessories. And then in here, we have update controllers. And this is going to look for updates specifically for the Joy-Con. So you'll have to do these separately, first for the left Joy-Con and then to the right, to make sure that they're running up to date. Next, I want to take a look at notifications. Now, notifications are everywhere these days on our computers, on our phones, and yes, even on our Switch. But it is important to audit this and see which notifications you actually want to allow to come in and which you don't. And my advice is to really turn off as many as you can. So to do this, we're going to go into System Settings, tap onto Notifications, and then here, for example, first of all, we can turn on or off notifications for finished downloads. You even have things like friend settings. Which notifications do you want to come in? And then secondly, here, if we go back, you have your point settings, your alarm settings, notification sounds. I suggest you just go through these and see which notifications you want and which you don't. I think a lot of these are just worth turning off. That way you're not disrupted while playing your game, as a lot of them I don't think are important enough to disrupt me while I'm playing. So go through this, and I think that's going to give you a better peace of mind and, well, better focus when you are playing. Now, let's take a look at some sleep mode settings. So to do this, we're going to jump into sleep settings, or system settings rather, and then we're going to jump into sleep mode. Let me go ahead and find it. Scroll all the way down here to sleep mode. There it is. And first of all, what we're going to do is set the sleep time. Now, we can set this for two different ways. First is when you're playing on the console, so when you're just on the Switch, and the second is when your TV is connected. Now, when you're on the console, I suggest you set this to a shorter time, as that's going to help you save battery. So for example, 3 minutes, I think even 1 minute might be good. That way when your console, when your Switch is just on a table, it will sleep when it needs to. And then on the TV, I usually set this a little bit later. I think 1 hour is fine. I think any longer might be overkill, but maybe an hour is fine. And that way your Switch will eventually sleep if, say, you are not using it. And then one setting that I recommend you turn off here is wake when AC adapter is disconnected. So let's say you're charging your Switch, you unplug it. For some reason, it always just boots up right away. I don't know why. I don't really like that. So I just turn this off. This way, when I'm unplugging my Switch, the screen doesn't need to turn on. All right, so here we are in my living room, where I want to show you some dock-specific settings on the Switch 2, but to change these, you will need to have your Switch connected to your TV, as I have here. So once you've docked your Switch, what we're going to do is we are going to jump into System Settings, and then in here, we're going to scroll down to where we find Display. And the first setting we are going to turn on or off is your HDR output. Now, if your television is more modern or one of the newer TVs, it will support HDR, in which case I do recommend you turn on HDR output, as that's going to give you the best visuals for your games. And then beneath that, we have the option to change your TV resolution, and you want to make sure to change this to the highest possible resolution that your TV supports. In my case, that is going to be 4K. And beneath this option, depending on whether your TV supports it or not, you will have the ability to turn on or off a 120 Hertz output. Now, this particular television does not, so if I tap onto dock output information, you will see that it goes up to 60 Hertz when in 4K, and your TV may be the same, but if your TV does support 4K at 120 Hertz, you will find the option here to turn that on as well, something I do recommend if that option is available. And beneath that, we have your RGB range, and you want to set this to full range to get the best color detail, as opposed to the limited range or automatic as is set by default. One note that I'd like to add specifically on the 120 Hertz refresh rate is that this is not supported by the Switch if you are running in 4K. The maximum resolution for that is going to be 1440p. So if you want to play in 4K, 120 Hertz is not going to be accepted like I have here on my TV. Another crucial setting in this page is if we scroll down, we have the Match TV Power State. Now, this here is really useful. This way, when your Switch is docked, it will automatically turn on your TV and attach soundbar if you have one. And this way, when you turn off your Switch, your TV and soundbar should turn off as well. So this is a useful feature that I definitely recommend that you turn on as well. And scrolling further down, we have the HDR output setting, in which case I recommend you switch this to compatible software only, as having it as always enabled, which is the default setting, means that Nintendo will apply an HDR effect to even games that don't support HDR, and this will result in some washed out colors. So you want to make sure to set this to compatible software only. Next, I want to show you one of my favorite features here of the Switch 2, and that is the brand new mouse mode. Now, I want to demonstrate this in one of my favorite games of all time, and that is Cyberpunk 2077. Really been enjoying this on the Switch, but to activate mouse mode, what you want to do is first disconnect both Joy-Cons, then reconnect them like so, and then in the box of your Switch 2, you will have two of these attachments for your Joy-Con, one for the left and one for the right. And what you want to do is attach this to your Joy-Con, so from the bottom up, like so. That has now been connected, and we are now ready for mouse mode. Now, for some games, like for example in Cyberpunk, we do need to go into the settings here to enable this. So we're going to go into settings and then tap onto settings, and in here we're going to go into controllers and then mouse sensor, and you want to make sure that that there is enabled. And now, as you can see, check this out, I take the right controller, I place it down, I am now using mouse mode here on the Switch 2, and this gives you a kind of a desktop experience on the Switch 2. And this here I think is really great, especially if, say, you've got your Switch 2 docked like this, you've got it set up on the kickstand, or maybe connected to, for example, a monitor or even a TV, and you're playing at a desk. This here is going to give you a much more precise aim, allow you to more quickly, let's get out the way, allow you to more quickly switch between angles and move, I think, with much more precision than you would with just the analog stick. And I find the accuracy of the mouse here to be really quite good. It is smooth, it's got a really nice curve to it, where a small movement gives you very precise motion, where if you want a quick motion, as you can see, you don't even need to move all that much. So this is something I really recommend. It's not necessarily supported in every game, but it is supported in Cyberpunk, and I think first-person games like that are going to be the perfect example for this mode. Now, there is one setting that I do recommend you switch, or rather set, if you are often playing in mouse mode. And to do this, we're going to jump into system settings here, and then we are going to scroll to where we find controllers and accessories. And then down here, if we scroll to mouse sensitivity, we can actually change the sensitivity of the mouse just like you would, say, on a computer. I like to set it to fast. This way, when you're on a tighter, smaller surface, like a small desk or maybe on an airplane, tray table or something, then you can do it with very minimum space. And next, I want to show you a really neat feature that, once enabled, gives you a built-in zoom, as you can see, basically on any Switch game. And you can go ahead and zoom in to see things in the distance without having to first walk towards them. This is great, especially if you are playing on a very detail-rich game like Cyberpunk. So I use this feature quite often. And let me show you how to enable this. So what we're going to do is jump into settings, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find accessibility. And then in here, we have zoom, and you want to make sure that that is turned on. Now to activate this feature, you want to double press on the home button, and as you can see, this will even work here within the settings app, and this will allow us to, with the right Joy-Con, maneuver around, and then using the X and Y buttons, I can then even change the amount of zoom. And the cool thing is, like I said, this of course also works as we just saw within the game, or any game really, so really useful. Simply double tap the home button to activate, and then double tap it again to bring it back. And now earlier we looked at updating the Joy-Cons, but just as important is of course updating your Switch itself. So it's important to every once in a while check for a system update, and to do this we're going to go into settings and then scroll all the way down to system. And here first of all you want to check for a system update, and if you have one you want to make sure to do it right away. And separately to that we also have the dock update. So for this you will need to dock your console like I showed earlier, and that's going to allow you to update the dock as well. So got a few updates to keep track of: the Switch, the Joy-Cons, and the dock. Of course, these are all separate components, so you want to make sure everything is running up to date. Now finally, this here is great if you want to get a fresh start to your Switch, or if say a couple years down the line you may plan to sell it or give it away or whatever you plan to do. This is going to show you how to factory reset your Switch to make sure that all of your personal data is removed. And to do this we are going to jump into settings, then system, and then scroll to where we find formatting options, or right here at the bottom. And then here we scroll all the way down to where we find restore factory settings. Now this is going to remove everything from your Switch, all of your game save data, all of your screenshots, all of your cache files, whatever you have on there will be removed. So this is of course only used if say you are selling or giving away your Switch in the future and you don't want your personal data to go with it. And well, there you have it. Those are the 40 settings that I recommend you switch on your Switch 2. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. And if you enjoy settings videos like this, I've also done similar videos both for iPhone as well as Galaxy phones, which I'll leave linked on screen right now so you can get more out of those powerful devices. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.